Muito obrigado, boa tarde a todos. Connosco temos Jason Purvor, que é o Head de Data Centers, de transformação digital Data Centers da Google. Hi, how are you, Jason?
I'm fantastic, really good. Thank you for inviting me to the conference.
Just introduce you in Portuguese, so welcome. What can you tell us a little bit about who you are in Google, what you do for us here in Portugal?
Absolutely. Quick note to the organisers, I'm unable to share my screen, so you may need to bring up the first slide if you wouldn't mind to help me out here. So my name is Jason Purvor. I'm the EMEA lead for data centre transformation and mass migration, which means I have probably the longest card in Google's history. It's a trifold card in order to put all that on there. But what do? I work in a small concentrated team of experts. What we do as a organisation is help customers to get from where they are today in their current state architectures to Google Cloud and being able to exploit what we call the superpowers of cloud.
Fantastic, Jason. So what trends you see today in the market? What are you seeing today in the market?
Yeah, sure. So let's take a look at the slide. So what we've seen over the last several years is a shift in what customers are wanting to achieve with cloud. When the cloud originally emanated, customers were typically looking to continue to do what they did in their previous guise on-premise, but in cloud in order to get a cost reduction. So a simple lift and shift was the order of the day. And then things started to get a little bit more interesting because people started realizing that there was an opportunity to use the elasticity of cloud to burst for peaks and to take away the cost of having to build a data center to meet peak, but rather just to meet the average demand, and a shift from OpEx to CapEx. And what that gives customers is the ability to have predictable scalability, which previously would have been quite difficult to do if you're having to wait 6-12 weeks in order to get a new server installed in order to stand up additional services. And then, of course, over the last several years, what we've seen is an increasing shift of companies moving towards modernizing their estates, where they're looking to break free of the shackles of licensed technology, go with open standards, and also then to basically take workloads to populate them into containers. And of course, Google is known for having brought Kubernetes to market, which is now being used by all clouds in order to basically help customers to go on that modernization journey. And really what that gives giving customers is an ability to have portability in a multi-cloud environment, which increasingly customers want to have.
So, but that is where enthusiasm is key, and you are talking about companies surviving and striving. So what can you talk a little bit more about that?
Yeah, for sure. So the idea behind this is that doing things the way you did them before is no longer a defense against the comet that is coming. And if we take a look back at the slide, what you're going to see is that there's, those of you who have seen the movie Don't Look Up will know what this is about. Spoiler alert, one slide back, please. Spoiler alert, the comet is coming. People who don't look up get hit by the comet. And so traditional businesses are increasingly look at cloud as a way to basically defend themselves against new entrants coming into their markets and transform businesses that are coming. And the surviving piece is about, if the focus is there, then it's going to be a survival game. But where companies are thriving and really getting growth is when they're driving business value out of cloud. They're exploiting the superpowers of cloud. And what do I mean by that? I mean, it is collaboration, it's streaming analytics, it's AI and ML. And this is where Google has a particular advantage, I feel, because, of course, our entire business was built upon that. The foundations of Google was around data, exploiting data, around building models for analytics so that we could serve our ad customers, for example, and ML and AI, which now drive virtually every single service that we have, from YouTube through to automated cars. All of these things are basically now being used as superpowers that enable us to deliver new business models and innovation at scale very quickly. And what that means is that we're thriving, and customers that are embracing this idea of exploiting the superpowers of cloud are the ones who are starting to get a competitive advantage. And then the final phase of this is this transformation piece, where customers are increasingly looking to use cloud as a mechanism to get out of the data center, where they want to become more digital native. They want to essentially leave behind the legacy and focus their business on growth and new opportunity as opposed to actually running operations. And that's really where we see the future of our customers thriving, and not just defending against the comet, but actually becoming the comet.
It's really interesting, but what do you think are the topics that are key and the top of mind of our customers today?
Yeah, that's a good question. So let's pop on to the next slide. So I think things are shifting, and I know one of the things that has been talked about during this conference is the idea of KPIs changing. And so, what do we get out of cloud? Well, of course, we can go past this table stakes of increased security, governance, managing your operational model. And we're starting to see customers really want to actually exploit these superpowers, get the actionable insights out of their data to drive innovation through the use of cutting edge infrastructure and data combined. They want more speed to market. Really, that's a big thing. So as we think about the KPIs, the customers are coming to us and saying, really what we want is these things. We want sustainability. And Google Cloud has got a great heritage here because we're the first carbon neutral cloud, and we're heading towards carbon free by 2030. So just by virtue of moving workloads to Google Cloud, you're starting to embrace your CO2 emissions requirements. Resilience and cyber resilience is a really important point as well. Customers are increasingly coming to Google Cloud because we're able to stand up services to support, for example, SAP workloads at very large scale, and also VMware type farms, which are traditional in many data centers, and provide an ability to provide DR without the need for a secondary data center. So really consolidating very quickly things down. Growth is really important. I think we've gone through a process of over the last several years of consolidation, of compression. Companies are having to be agile and deliver more hybrid services for their workforce. But really what they're looking for now is how do we get growth? And so a lot of the discussions we have with customers are around helping them to move from this core, where the data center is in the center of the screen, outwards towards a greener future with all these various combined KPIs delivered. And it is a journey. I think this is an important thing. The reason that we have these concentric circles is that what we have to do is meet customers where they are. So in order to achieve this transformation journey, we have to take into account people, process, and technology. And what I mean by people is making sure that we are continuously upskilling existing staff, also taking a look at specific workloads as we look to holistically at data center. Are there workloads where it would be better to borrow people, in other words, use a consultancy to move a particular workload because you don't need those skills on an ongoing basis? It's a one-time cost. Or are these skills that you want to develop within your organization? Do you have them already? What do you need to attract talent in order to do this? So those are the kind of things we do on the people side. On the process side, it's about moving away from 12 wet signatures on a piece of paper and a 12-week delivery cycle to giving stakeholders a budget and building guardrails and allowing them to go and innovate at scale and at speed. And so we have these concentric circles because we may start off with, for example, an idea to close a data center with a certain time horizon. And we may want to focus on modernizing applications initially and continue to do so up until a particular moment in time, some months before, and then finish the job of getting out of the data center by using lift and shift as a last resort. But in this, we also have to take into account the fact that anything that's left in the data center becomes increasingly costly. So the last workload is the most expensive. And so really what this is about understanding that, if you have a database, or rather a mainframe, AIX, HPUX, ZOS, some legacy x86, how do we deal with those? And so within my team, what we're doing is building these concentric circles where we can move things out of the data center based upon the capabilities of organizations today. So we may take a simple step. For example, with a VMware workload, we may just move that onto Google Cloud's VMware engine, where they can continue to use the tools they already use on premise and continue to operate in exactly the same model. But from there, we have an option now to move to Google Compute Engine, where it becomes more cloud native for a VM workload, or perhaps into a Kubernetes environment, or perhaps PaaS. But what we need to do then is to skill up the teams in order to operationalize that before we take the next step. And that applies to all of the different pillars, whether it be infra mod, whether it be application mod, or whether it be data mod. So all of these components need to be looked at holistically. And we look at it from a multiple different layers. We take a look at the detail of the infrastructure and also at the data layers and the application layers. And increasingly customers want to consolidate their data layers and then democratize access to that to their users, whether they are in offices or spread across the globe working from home like I am.
Thank you very much. I think there is absolutely a question out there is how do we get this started? How do we start this journey?
So good question. Let's go to the last slide here. And so I kind of wanted to break this down into some super simple blocks. So to get started really is about understanding your current state architecture. So we begin with what I call good data. And let me define what I mean by that. Prior to this, I worked for before Google, I worked for about 5 years with a big data analytics company that worked on gathering metadata at scale from data centers. And so I perhaps looked at over 400 complex estates over the last several years. And one thing I can tell you is that people with bad data make bad decisions with great certainty. And so what we want to do is get good data. What do I mean by that? What I mean is metadata, which is current and relevant, continuously gathered. It's not sufficient today to just look purely at CMDB and expect that to be completely accurate. I would say that, I will probably give away my shirt if I find someone who actually has a CMDB that is totally up to date in a complex environment. I will say in a complex environment, it's not if you just got one virtual machine, expensive shirt. But good data is all about understanding, your current state architecture, understanding how the interdependencies between different elements of the infrastructure, how they impact business processes within an organization, who the application owners are and what their requirements are. So there's no use in moving workloads which are associated with multiple other workloads and then breaking dependencies. It's equally no good to move a workload on a Friday night if that happens to be the day that you're doing your quarterly payroll run. So we need to be aware of all these factors before we kind of move forward. The second pillar is the prepare. And this is about basically building the team. So within an organization, I think the important thing is to build a really good team of people who are responsible for delivering the cloud journey. The go-to people who gather this intelligence from within the organization are people who are there to basically answer questions that stakeholders may have or to deal with concerns. So you need to have this sounding board within the organization that is continuously looking at what is the best next step for us based upon our capabilities today and where are we taking this over time? What do we need to do to close this gap, whether that be a skills gap or an organizational incompleteness that we need to take care of and address? And I think summarizing that particular phase up, this is where the heavy lifting really takes place. And we at Google really spent a lot of time doing this part because it was Napoleon who said, dress me slowly, I'm in a hurry. And I think that really is what it's about, is don't rush. And during the prepare phase, you can in parallel also be starting to consume some cloud services to start the process of getting people used to cloud services, to get some exposure to it. So getting your feet wet, I think, is really important as soon as possible. And that's why we tend to want to choose a non-critical but important workload, not necessarily just to get the workload across the line, but actually because as part of that, what you're doing is you're climbing up that staircase of knowledge and building a muscle within the organization that you can then flex as you look at next workloads. And then finally, it's about exploiting superpowers. What I would urgently suggest is that the market is shifting. All of these things can happen together, by the way. You don't need to go functionally through the process of a cost optimization exercise, then a modernization, and then a exploit superbrowser cloud, all these things can be interconnected. But there are, what we tend to have in a complex data center is we need to basically create multiple different work streams, which either run concurrently or in sequence, but in a complex manner, and basically ensuring that all of the tick boxes are there in terms of people, process, and technology before we actually start moving things from left to right.
So Jason, just enough time to say thank you, and I will share your contacts with the audience just in case some question pops up. Nevertheless, I will be here with them. Thank you very much for being with us
Obrigado.
today. Okay?
Great pleasure.
Muito obrigado a todos.